You're useless as a wife. Amanda Caldwell's words echo across Sacred Heart Cathedral like a slap. Elena Rivera's wheelchair seems to shrink beneath her wedding dress, while 150 guests lean forward with phones raised, recording her destruction for the internet. Brandon ran 30 minutes ago, couldn't even face her himself, sent his sister to deliver the killing blow instead. Elena's fingers crush her bouquet until white roses bleed onto ivory silk. The cathedral doors explode open. Thunder, motorcycle engines. A scarred giant in Mongol's leather fills the doorway, his presence swallowing the light. And Elena makes a choice that will either save her or destroy what's left. She looks this dangerous stranger in the eye and says one word. Help. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from in the comments below, and if this story moves you, hit that subscribe button, because what happens next will restore your faith in unexpected heroes. Trust me, you'll want to see how this unfolds. The cathedral's silence pressed against Elena like a physical weight. Amanda Caldwell, Brandon's perfectly polished sister, stood there with her rehearsed sympathy face, the one she probably practiced in mirrors before charity galas. Where is he? Elena's voice came out steadier than she expected. 8 months of physical therapy had taught her control when her body betrayed her. Now her emotions would do the same. Amanda's expression flickered with something that looked almost like respect before the corporate PR mask slid back into place. Brandon asked me to explain that he needs time to process everything. He said the pressure became overwhelming. The pressure. Elena repeated the words slowly, tasting their absurdity. We've been engaged for 4 years. I've been using this wheelchair for 8 months. What exactly is he processing now that he didn't process during 32 weeks of physical therapy, occupational therapy, and learning to live in a body that doesn't work the way it used to? A gasp rippled through the front rows. Elena's mother, Rosa Rivera, started to rise from her seat, but Elena caught her eye and shook her head once, firmly. This moment belonged to Elena alone. Amanda shifted her weight, her confidence cracking at the edges. He wanted me to tell you that he'll always care about you. That this isn't about you being in your condition. It's about him not being emotionally equipped to be married to a woman in a wheelchair. Elena finished the sentence Amanda was too polite to complete. Let me save everyone some time and translate Brandon's corporate speak. He's embarrassed. His colleagues at the tech firm made jokes about pushing his wife around. His golf buddies asked inappropriate questions about our sex life. His mother worried about grandchildren and whether I could properly host dinner parties from a seated position. Amanda's silence confirmed everything. Elena looked past Amanda to the assembled guests. Her former colleagues from Children's Memorial Hospital clustered in the middle section, their faces twisted with genuine sympathy. Brandon's work associates filled the right side, several already texting furiously, probably alerting their own partners about the drama unfolding. The left side held Rosa's church friends and Elena's extended family, their expressions moving between rage and protectiveness. I need to speak with him directly, Elena said, her hands steadying on her wheelchair's push rims. Where is he hiding? He's not hiding. He left the cathedral 20 minutes ago. He asked me to handle this because he thought it would be easier for you. The laugh that escaped Elena's throat startled even her. Easier? He thought having his sister deliver a breakup message at our wedding altar would be easier than facing me himself? Elena, please understand. I understand perfectly. Elena's voice cut through Amanda's platitudes with surgical precision. I understand that your brother is a coward who spent 8 months pretending to be supportive while secretly resenting every accommodation we made for my disability. I understand that he viewed my paralysis as a social liability rather than a challenge we'd face together. I understand that his love was conditional on my ability to walk down an aisle and fit into his carefully curated life plan. Amanda's professional composure finally cracked. You're being unfair. Do you have any idea how difficult this has been for him? Watching you struggle, feeling helpless, wondering if he's strong enough to handle a lifetime of... Of what? Of loving someone who isn't perfect? Elena's words rang out across the cathedral, and she didn't care who heard. Of being married to a woman who needs grab bars in the bathroom and ramps instead of stairs. Of having a wife who'll never wear heels to his company Christmas party? That's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant. Elena turned her wheelchair to face the congregation directly. The movement was smooth, practiced, the result of countless hours learning to navigate a world designed for standing people. Can I tell you all something? For 8 months, I've been apologizing. Apologizing for the subway accident that left me paralyzed. Apologizing for needing Brandon's help transferring from bed to wheelchair. Apologizing for making restaurant reservations complicated because we had to confirm accessibility. Apologizing for existing in a body that makes other people uncomfortable. Rosa stood up, tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling. Actually smiling. Mi hija, no more apologies. No more apologies, Elena repeated. The words felt like oxygen after months of suffocation. Thunder crashed outside, closer now. The spring storm that had threatened all morning was finally arriving, and Elena found the timing almost poetic. Something in her was breaking open, too, and maybe that wasn't entirely bad. That's when she noticed him. The man stood in the cathedral's back doorway, rain dripping from his leather jacket onto the polished floor. He was massive, easily 6'4", with shoulders that blocked most of the light from the entrance. His Mongol's MC vest was unmistakable, the patches marking him as part of Chicago's most feared motorcycle club. A jagged scar ran from his left temple down to his jaw, and his dark eyes surveyed the scene with the sharp assessment of someone trained to evaluate threats. Several guests turned to look, and Elena heard the sharp intake of breath from Brandon's corporate friends. One of them, probably Jason from Brandon's investment team, whispered loudly enough to carry, "Someone call security." But the man didn't move like a threat. He moved like someone who'd stumbled into private grief and wasn't sure whether to stay or go. Elena made a decision in that split second. "Don't call anyone." Amanda followed Elena's gaze and went pale. "Elena, that's a human being standing in a church during a storm. I know." Elena raised her voice slightly. "You're welcome to wait out the rain if you need to." The man's expression shifted, surprise replacing the careful neutrality. He nodded once, a gesture that somehow conveyed both respect and understanding, then moved to the back pew with footsteps that were surprisingly quiet for someone his size. Amanda leaned down, her voice dropping to an urgent whisper. "Are you insane? That's a Mongols member. They're criminals." "And your brother is a coward who abandoned his fiancée at the altar via proxy. I'm not sure which character flaw is worse." Elena turned back to Amanda. "Tell Brandon I'll have my belongings out of his apartment by Friday. Tell him I'm keeping Maria." "The wheelchair? Elena, that was a gift from both of us. The wheelchair has a name, and she's mine. Brandon can afford another tax deduction. Now please leave. You've delivered your message." Amanda's mouth opened, closed, then opened again. "He really does care about you." "No, he doesn't. He cares about not looking like the villain in this story." Unfortunately for him, that ship has sailed, sunk, and is currently decomposing at the bottom of Lake Michigan. Elena's hands found her push rims again. "Tell him I hope he finds someone who fits into his life without requiring any actual growth or compromise on his part. I'm sure there are plenty of women willing to be accessories to his career." "You're making a mistake. Where will you go? What will you do?" The questions hit exactly where Amanda intended. Elena had been living in Brandon's Lincoln Park penthouse for 6 months, ever since her accessible apartment in Pilsen became financially impossible on disability payments alone. Her job at Children's Memorial had evaporated 3 weeks after her accident, when the administration discovered their liability insurance didn't cover therapists with mobility limitations. Her savings were nearly gone after co-pays and medical equipment. But Rosa stood up again, her voice carrying the strength of a woman who'd immigrated alone at 19 and built a life through sheer will.
She comes home, to family, where she should have been all along instead of with that pendejo who couldn't see what he had.
Elena felt something loosen in her chest.
Mama, no arguments. You come home tonight. We make room.
Rosa switched to Spanish, her words rapid and fierce.
I never liked him. Too smooth. Like oil, not water. Oil looks fine until you try to hold it. Then it slips through your fingers and leaves stains.
Several of Rosa's friends nodded approvingly. One of them, Mrs. Delgado, called out,
My son has a truck. We move you tomorrow. I have brothers with trucks too, added another voice. Say the word.
Elena looked at the community forming around her mother. These people who'd known her since childhood, who'd brought casseroles during her hospital stay, who'd donated money they didn't have to help with medical bills. Brandon's people had sent cards with generic messages. Her people showed up.
Thank you,
Elena said, her voice thick with emotions she'd suppressed for months.
I'd be grateful for the help.
Amanda backed away slowly, clearly recognizing she'd lost whatever control she'd imagined she had over this situation.
I'll tell Brandon you'll be in touch about the logistics. Don't bother, he has my number. If he wants to discuss anything, he can be an adult and call me directly.
Elena watched Amanda retreat down the aisle, her expensive shoes clicking an increasingly rapid rhythm as she fled the cathedral. The guests began standing, unsure whether to approach with condolences or leave to avoid further awkwardness. Elena's former supervisor from the hospital, Dr. Patricia Owens, pushed through the crowd with determined purpose.
Elena, I'm so sorry. If there's anything, you could give me my job back,
Elena said, the words escaping before her filter caught them.
Sorry.
That was inappropriate. Dr. Owens' face flushed. You know it wasn't my decision. Administration felt that the physical demands of pediatric therapy required standing.
I know. Even though I'd already developed modifications for every single treatment protocol. Even though my wheelchair actually made me more effective with certain patients because I could meet them at eye level and demonstrate exercises from a seated position. Even though the only real issue was discomfort with disability, not actual job performance.
Elena,
it's fine, Dr. Owens. I understand. Liability trumps competence. I hope the therapist they hired to replace me is working out well.
Elena's tone wasn't bitter exactly, just tired.
If you'll excuse me, I'd like to leave now.
Dr. Owens stepped aside, and the crowd parted like water. Ina began rolling toward the back of the cathedral, her mother falling into step beside her wheelchair with the practiced ease of someone who'd learned to match pace without being asked. As they approached the back pew where the biker waited, he stood smoothly. Up close, he was even more imposing, but his eyes held something Elena recognized from her work with traumatized children, someone who'd seen too much and carried the weight quietly.
Thank you for the shelter,
he said, his voice surprisingly soft with a hint of a southern accent. Tennessee, maybe, or Kentucky. Least I could do after you walked into that mess. Elena paused, studying his face.
You're military, aren't you? Or were?
His eyebrows rose slightly. What makes you say that?
The way you stand. The way you assessed the room when you entered. The way you're positioned now so you can see both exits without turning your head.
Elena smiled slightly.
Plus, I've worked with a lot of vets.
You all have a particular way of holding yourselves. Navy, Corpsman, 3 deployments. He seemed to make a decision. Jax Monroe.
Elena Rivera. She extended her hand, and his handshake was careful, calibrated not to overwhelm. And this is my mother, Rosa. Rosa evaluated Jax with the intense scrutiny only mothers possessed. Whatever she saw made her nod approvingly. You have kind eyes. Sad, but kind. Jax looked genuinely taken aback by the observation. Yes, ma'am. That's accurate. The cathedral doors burst open, and a young man in a soaked suit rushed in, his eyes wild. Elena, thank God you're still here. Brandon sent me to… To what? Deliver another message? Elena's exhaustion crystallized into something sharper. Who are you? Trevor, I'm Brandon's assistant. He wanted me to bring you this. Trevor extended a manila envelope with trembling hands. Rosa intercepted it, opening the envelope with the efficiency of someone who dealt with bureaucracy in 2 languages her entire life. Her expression darkened as she read. He wants you to sign a non-disclosure agreement. About the wedding. About your relationship. About his reasons for leaving. He what? Elena couldn't process the words. He'll cover your moving expenses and pay 2 months of rent at your new location if you agree not to discuss the wedding publicly or make disparaging remarks about him on social media or to media outlets. Rosa's voice could have frozen lava. He's offering you money to protect his reputation. Trevor shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Caldwell felt it was the most professional way to handle an unfortunate situation. Clean break, no messy publicity. Something inside Elena snapped. Not the explosive kind of breaking, but the quiet structural failure of a bridge that had been supporting too much weight for too long. She started laughing, the sound echoing off the cathedral's vaulted ceiling. Professional, she gasped between laughs. He left me at the altar via his sister, and now he wants me to sign an NDA like I'm a disgruntled employee being laid off. That's incredible. That's actually incredible. Jax was watching her carefully, and Elena recognized the assessment. He was trying to determine if she was breaking down or breaking through. Rosa knew the difference immediately. Mi hija is fine, Rosa told him. This is the laughter of someone who just realized she's been in a cage and the door was never actually locked. I'm not signing that, Elena said, her laughter subsiding into something calmer. Tell Brandon that if he wanted to control the narrative, he should have controlled his actions. I'm not making any promises about what I will or won't say. Trevor's face went pale. He'll be very disappointed. He'll survive. Apparently, disappointment builds character. I should know. Elena turned her wheelchair toward the exit. I'm leaving now. If Brandon has anything else to say, he knows where to find me. Well, he knows where my mother lives. I'll be there. The rain was coming down in sheets, turning the cathedral steps into a waterfall. The accessible ramp was on the far side of the building, which meant navigating around in the storm or… There's a maintenance entrance on this side, Jax said quietly. Shorter ramp, covered overhang. Want me to show you? Elena looked at this stranger who'd appeared in the middle of her disaster like some kind of scarred guardian angel. Why are you being helpful? Because I recognize someone under fire when I see them, and I don't leave people behind. His tone was matter-of-fact, like this was the most obvious thing in the world. Rosa was already nodding. We accept. Lead the way. They followed Jax through a side door Elena had never noticed in all her pre-wedding walkthroughs. The maintenance corridor was narrow, but her wheelchair fit easily. Jax moved ahead, checking around corners before gesturing them forward, and Elena realized he was doing this unconsciously. Whatever he'd seen during his deployments had left permanent habits. The covered ramp led to a parking area where Rosa's old Honda Civic waited. Mrs. Delgado was already there, having somehow circled around, holding an umbrella the size of a small tent. "I brought the car closer," Mrs. Delgado announced. "And I called Father Miguel. He's preparing your old room." "Father Miguel doesn't—" Elena stopped. "Mama, we don't live at the church." Rosa had the grace to look slightly sheepish. "I may have been staying in the rectory guest room since last month. The landlord raised rent again. Father Miguel said I could stay until I found something better." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you had enough to worry about with that man and his doubts." Rosa's expression softened.
Besides, the church has good ramps, better than most places. Father Miguel's nephew uses a wheelchair. He made sure everything was accessible. Elena felt tears threatening, but they were different from the earlier humiliation. These were the kind that came from recognizing you'd been loved all along, even when you felt most alone. Jax stood off to the side, rain soaking his leather vest, clearly preparing to leave now that he'd fulfilled whatever obligation he felt. On impulse, Elena stopped him. "Wait, I don't know if this is weird, but do you have somewhere to be? Because I could use a drink, and I'm guessing you might too after witnessing that disaster." Rosa's eyes sharpened with interest. "This is a good idea. You come to Lou's with us. It's a diner, not fancy, but the coffee is strong, and the owner doesn't judge." "Lou's?" Jax's expression shifted to something almost like a smile. "On Halstead?" "You know it?" Elena was surprised. "The MC goes there sometimes. Lo was a Marine. Vietnam. He tolerates us better than most places." "Then you're coming," Rosa decided. "Elena needs to be around people who understand that sometimes the worst days make space for better things." Jax looked at Elena, a question in his eyes. She nodded. "All right," he said. "I'll follow on my bike." As they helped Elena into Rosa's car, Trevor was still standing in the rain, clutching his rejected envelope like it might spontaneously combust. Elena rolled down the window. "Trevor, tell Brandon something for me." "Of course. Tell him I said thank you." Trevor blinked. "For what?" "For being exactly who he is today, instead of 10 years from now when we had kids and a mortgage, and I was too invested to leave. Tell him his cowardice was actually a gift, and I'm grateful he revealed it now." She rolled the window back up before Trevor could respond. As Rosa pulled out of the parking lot, Elena watched Sacred Heart Cathedral recede in the side mirror. The building where she was supposed to start her new life had instead become the place where her real life finally began. Jax's Harley rumbled behind them, a steady presence in the storm. Elena didn't know this man, didn't know his story beyond the scars on his face and the patches on his vest, but something in his quiet strength made her feel less alone than she had in months. Rosa glanced at her daughter, reading her expression with maternal precision. "You know what your abuela used to say?" "Which one?" "She said a lot of things. When God closes a door, he opens a window. But sometimes, mi hija, he sends a man on a motorcycle to knock down the whole wall." Elena started laughing again, and this time it felt like freedom. Lou's Diner occupied a corner lot that had survived 3 recessions and 4 ownership changes before Lou Marchetti bought it in 1987. The building wasn't much to look at, but the ramp leading to the entrance had been installed before accessibility laws required it, and the door was wide enough for Elena's wheelchair without her having to angle through sideways. Jax held the door as Rosa and Mrs. Delgado flanked Elena like protective sentries. Inside, the diner was nearly empty except for 2 Mongols members playing pool in the back corner and a waitress who looked like she'd been pouring coffee since the Carter administration. The waitress, whose name tag read Dolores, took one look at Elena's rain-soaked wedding dress and didn't even blink. "Booth or table, honey?" "Booth," Elena said, and Dolores simply nodded, grabbing menus.
They settled into a corner booth with worn red vinyl seats. Jax positioned himself where he could see both the front entrance and the back exit. That military habit again.
Ayn maneuvered her wheelchair to the table's end, grateful that Luz had removed the fourth chair to make space.
"Coffee all around?" Dolores asked. "And 3 slices of pie," Rosa added. "Whatever you have that's good." "It's all good, but the apple's fresh."
Dolores disappeared without waiting for confirmation. An uncomfortable silence settled over the table. Elena realized she'd essentially invited a complete stranger to join them without any clear plan for what happened next. Rosa seemed content to wait, her hands folded on the table in that patient way she had when she wanted Elena to work through something herself. Jax spoke first. "I'm sorry about your wedding."
"Don't be. Turns out it wasn't much of a loss."
Elena surprised herself with how easily the words came.
"How long have you been in Chicago?"
2 years. Transferred from the Tennessee chapter." He paused, then added, "Needed a fresh start." "From what?" The question was too direct, too personal for someone she'd known less than an hour. But Elena found she didn't care about social niceties anymore. Brandon had spent 8 months dancing around difficult conversations, protecting her from honesty he claimed would hurt her. She was done with protective lies. Jax's jaw tightened, and for a moment, Elena thought he'd shut down. Instead, he said, "From memories that don't fade just because you change zip codes." Rosa made a soft sound of understanding.
"Afghanistan?"
3 tours. 3rd one ended badly. Jax's fingers traced patterns on the table's scarred surface. Lost my whole unit to an IED. I was the corpsman. Was supposed to keep them alive. Elena's therapist training kicked in automatically, recognizing the survivor's guilt that saturated his words.
"You were their medic?"
"Yeah, for all the good it did them." His voice was flat, emotionless in the way people get when they've told a story too many times. Convoy hit an improvised explosive device outside Kandahar. I was in the rear vehicle. Everyone else was just gone. Except Petty Officer Jake Reeves. He lived for about 4 minutes while I tried to stop the bleeding.
"Jesus Christ,"
Mrs. Delgado whispered, crossing herself. Dolores returned with coffee and pie, sliding the plates across the table with practiced efficiency. She caught the tail end of Jax's story and paused.
"Lou wants you to know your money's no good here today. Corpsman drinks free. Always."
Jax looked up, surprised. "You don't have to."
"I don't have to do anything, except die and pay taxes, and I'm working on avoiding both as long as possible."
Dolores patted his shoulder with a gentleness that seemed incongruous with her gruff demeanor.
"Lou lost his son in Fallujah. Marine. Every military medical person eats free here. Those are the rules."
She walked away before Jax could argue. He stared at his coffee like it held answers. Elena made a decision. "You want to know something funny? Not ha-ha funny, but funny in that cosmically ironic way that makes you question everything?" "Sure," Jax said. "I saved a kid's life 8 months ago. 10-year-old boy named Marcus, who was goofing around on a subway platform. He stumbled, started to fall onto the tracks. A train was coming. I grabbed him, pulled him back, but my momentum carried me forward, and I went over instead." Elena took a sip of coffee, the bitter warmth steadying her. "I had about 2 seconds to make a choice. Let go and we both fall, or throw him back and go over alone." Rosa's eyes filled with tears. She'd heard this story before, but it never got easier. "The train didn't hit me. I landed between the rails and the driver stopped in time. But I hit my head hard, and my neck snapped back against the track at exactly the wrong angle. C7 to C8 spinal cord injury. Incomplete,
which means I have some sensation and movement, but not enough to walk.
Elena met Jax's eyes directly.
Marcus's mother visited me once in the hospital. She brought flowers and a card signed by their whole family. She cried and thanked me and said I was a hero.
You are, Jax said quietly.
Maybe. But you know what else I am? Unemployed. Because the hospital that employed me decided a wheelchair-using physical therapist was a liability. I'm broke because my savings went to medical equipment and co-pays. I'm homeless because I was living with a man who apparently viewed my disability as a character flaw he was too weak to tolerate. And I'm sitting in a diner in a wedding dress that I borrowed from my cousin because I couldn't afford to buy one. Elena's voice didn't break, but it came close. So tell me, Jax, what exactly did my heroism earn me? Rosa reached across the table and gripped Elena's hand. Mi hija. No, Mama. I need to say this out loud because I've been swallowing it for 8 months. Elena turned back to Jax.
You feel guilty because you couldn't save your unit. I feel angry because I did save someone and got punished for it. We're both carrying weight that's crushing us, and I'm tired of pretending it's not. Jax studied her face with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable, but somehow wasn't. Your fiancé left because you can't walk?
Brandon left because I required effort, because loving me meant making accommodations and dealing with other people's discomfort, and accepting that our life wouldn't look like the Pinterest board he'd been curating since college. Elena felt something loosening in her chest, years of diplomacy and careful phrasing falling away. He spent 8 months treating me like a project that needed managing, like if he just found the right combination of accessibility features and positive thinking, I'd stop being disabled and everything would go back to normal.
But you don't want normal, Jax said. It wasn't a question.
I want honest.
I want someone who looks at my wheelchair and sees a tool I use, not a tragedy they have to overcome. I want to stop apologizing for existing in a body that makes other people uncomfortable. Elena realized her hands were shaking.
Is that too much to ask?
No, Jax said simply. It's the bare minimum you deserve. The pool game in the back corner ended with a crack of balls colliding. One of the Mongols members, a guy with a shaved head and a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, approached their table. He nodded at Jax with the casual familiarity of club brothers. Reaper, didn't expect to see you today. Thought you were heading to Rockford for that thing with Diesel. Plans changed, Tank, Jax replied. Tank's gaze moved to Elena, taking in the wedding dress and wheelchair with the quick assessment of someone who'd learned to read situations fast. You need backup? No, just having coffee. Tank's expression said he understood there was more to the story, but knew better than to push. All right. You need anything, we're in the back. He nodded respectfully to Rosa and Mrs. Delgado before returning to his pool game. Elena watched the interaction with interest.
Reaper?
Jax's expression went carefully blank. Road name. Everyone in the club has one.
Why Reaper?
Because I kept people alive in situations where they should have died. The name's ironic now. His fingers tightened around his coffee mug. After the IED, after Jake Reeves bled out in my arms telling me to tell his wife he loved her, I stopped believing I had any right to that name. Rosa made a soft sound of sympathy, but Elena's therapist brain was already working.
Is that why you joined the club? Because you didn't feel like you deserved to live the life you'd saved others for?
Jax's head snapped up, his eyes meeting hers with something like shock.
How did you? I worked with pediatric trauma patients, kids who'd survived things that killed siblings or parents. Survivor's guilt has a particular flavor, and you're swimming in it.
Elena gentled her tone.
I'm not judging. I'm just recognizing. She's good at that, Rosa said to Jax. Always has been. Even when she was pequeña, she could look at people and see what they were carrying. Mrs. Delgado nodded. Remember Tommy Delgado? My nephew who came back from Iraq all messed up? Elena was 16, but she sat with him for hours, just listening. No judgment, no platitudes. He told her things he never told his therapist at the VA. I'm not a therapist anymore, Elena said quietly. The skill doesn't go away just because you lost the job, Jax replied. He seemed to make a decision. You're right. I joined the Mongols because I didn't know how to be a civilian after everything that happened. The club understood that some things change you permanently.
They didn't ask me to be okay. They just asked me to show up.
And have you been showing up?
Physically, yes. Emotionally, Jax's laugh was bitter. I've been running on autopilot for 2 years. Wake up, work out, do whatever the club needs, go to bed, have nightmares, repeat. I stopped feeling things because feeling meant remembering, and remembering meant reliving the worst day of my life over and over. Elena recognized that pattern. She'd seen it in Brandon too, that emotional shutdown masquerading as strength. But where Brandon's numbness came from cowardice, Jax's came from trauma. The difference mattered.
What made you come into the cathedral? Elena asked. You could have waited out the storm anywhere.
Honestly, I saw the wedding set up and thought it would be empty. Churches during ceremonies are usually quiet in the back. I just needed... He trailed off.
Peace, Rosa supplied. You needed peace.
Yeah.
Jax looked at Rosa with something like gratitude. I've been having a bad week. Today's the anniversary of the IED. 3 years exactly. I usually ride until I'm too tired to think, but the storm came up fast.
Elena's chest tightened.
You walked into a church on the anniversary of your unit's death and found another disaster unfolding?
Seems to be my pattern. Jax's tone was self-deprecating, but Elena heard the pain underneath. The difference is, this disaster was one I could actually help with.
By offering to escort me out?
By recognizing someone under attack who didn't deserve it. Jax met her eyes. You were maintaining your dignity while everyone around you either pitied you or judged you. That takes strength most people don't have.
Or stupidity, Elena said.
No, strength. I know the difference. Jax's voice carried absolute conviction. Weak people crumble under pressure. Strong people hold the line, even when everything's falling apart. You held the line. The words hit Elena harder than she expected. For 8 months, she'd been measuring herself against Brandon's disappointment, against her hospital's rejection, against a world that saw her wheelchair before it saw her. Having someone recognize her strength without qualification or caveat felt like water in a desert.
Thank you,
she said simply. Rosa had been watching the exchange with the sharp attention of a mother evaluating potential threats to her daughter. Whatever she saw in Jax's face must have satisfied her, because she said,
You're a good man. Damaged, maybe, but good. Mama,
Elena protested.
What? I'm old. I can be direct.
Rosa turned to Jax.
My daughter needs people in her life who see clearly. That man she almost married looked at her through fog and fear. You look at her and see truth. That matters.
Jax seemed at a loss for words. Elena saved him by changing the subject.
What do you do when you're not riding with the club?
I'm a veterans counselor at the VA hospital on West Side. Elena blinked.
You're a counselor? Surprised?
I'm surprised the VA hired someone with visible club affiliation. They're usually pretty conservative about that stuff.
They are, but my supervisor is former Army. Lost his leg in Desert Storm. He told the administration that if they wanted someone who could actually connect with combat veterans dealing with PTSD and survivor's guilt, they'd better hire someone who'd lived it. Jax's expression softened slightly. He went out on a limb for me, said my military record spoke for itself. What was your record? Mrs. Delgado asked. Silver Star for pulling wounded soldiers out of a firefight. Purple Heart for the shrapnel I took doing it. 3 Navy and Marine Corps commendation medals for various acts of medical heroism that weren't quite impressive enough for higher awards. Jax said it without pride, just stating facts. None of it mattered when the people I cared about most needed me, and I failed them. You didn't fail them, Elena said firmly. An IED failed them. The war failed them. The circumstances that put them in harm's way failed them. But you didn't. I was their corpsman. Their survival was my responsibility. And you're one person with 2 hands trying to save multiple casualties from an explosion designed to kill everyone in its radius. You're not God, Jax. You can't control everything. Elena leaned forward. Do you tell the veterans you counsel that they're failures when they couldn't save their friends? Of course not. Then why is the standard different for you? Jax opened his mouth, closed it, then said, Because I should have been better. Better than what? Human? Elena felt her therapist instincts taking over, the part of her that had made her excellent at her job before the hospital decided her wheelchair disqualified her. You survived something that killed everyone else. That's not a character flaw. That's random chance and maybe a little bit of positioning. And instead of drinking yourself to death or eating a bullet, you're using your experience to help other people navigate similar trauma. That's not failure. That's purpose, built from pain. The diner had gone quiet. Tank and his pool partner had stopped playing to listen. Dolores was wiping the same section of counter for the 3rd time. Rosa's eyes shimmered with tears. Jax's face had gone very still, and Elena worried she'd pushed too hard too fast. She was about to apologize when he said, No one's ever said it like that before. Said what? That surviving was okay. That I'm allowed to build something from what's left. His voice roughened. My therapist tells me I'm making progress. My club brothers tell me I'm doing fine. But they all dance around the central question, which is whether I deserve to be alive when better men died. And what's your answer to that question? Elena asked quietly. I don't know. That's the honest truth. I don't know if I deserve it, but I'm here anyway, and I'm trying to make that mean something. Then you're already ahead of most people. Elena thought about Brandon, who'd spent their entire relationship avoiding anything that required genuine effort or discomfort. Most people run from difficulty. You're running toward it, trying to help others even when you're still bleeding from your own wounds. That's not failure. That's courage. Rosa stood abruptly, startling everyone. I need to make phone calls about moving Elena's things tomorrow. Mrs. Delgado, you come help me. We'll give these two some privacy. Mama, you don't have to. Yes, I do. You're talking about real things, and you need space for that. Rosa squeezed Elena's shoulder as she passed. We'll be outside under the awning. Take your time. Mrs. Delgado followed Rosa out, leaving Elena and Jax alone in the booth. The Mongols members in the back had returned to their pool game, giving them the illusion of privacy. Your mother's intense, Jax said. She's protective, and she's right that we're talking about things that matter. Elena traced the rim of her coffee cup. Can I ask you something personal? You've already asked me about my dead friends and my survivor's guilt. How much more personal can it get? Do you regret coming into that cathedral today? Jax considered the question seriously. No. Do you regret inviting me here? No. Which is strange because I literally met you an hour ago and I'm sitting in a diner in a wet wedding dress talking about trauma and failure with a man who belongs to a motorcycle club my ex-fiancé would have crossed the street to avoid.
Your ex-fiancé sounds like he avoided a lot of things.
He excelled at avoidance. It was his signature move.
Elena felt the familiar anger rising, but let it come instead of suppressing it.
You know what the worst part is? I convinced myself his fear was love, that his constant worry about my safety and his insistence on doing things for me was protective instead of controlling. But it wasn't protective.
No, it was him wrapping me in bubble wrap so he wouldn't have to deal with the reality of my disability. If I stayed home, he didn't have to navigate accessibility issues. If I let him handle things, he didn't have to watch me struggle. If I made myself smaller and quieter and less complicated, he could pretend we were normal.
Elena's voice hardened. I spent 8 months apologizing for needing things and trying to make my existence more convenient for him. And in the end, it didn't matter because the fundamental problem wasn't anything I did. The problem was that he's weak.
He's weak, Jax repeated, like he was testing the words. And you're not.
I'm terrified,
Elena admitted.
I'm broke and homeless and unemployed, and I have no idea what happens next.
But I'm also furious, and I think the fury might be healthier than the fear.
Fury is useful. It keeps you moving when everything else says stop.
Jax's expression shifted, something almost like a smile touching his scarred face. When I got to Chicago, I was so numb I couldn't feel anything except rage. It was the only emotion that penetrated. My sponsor in the club, guy named Wolfpack, told me to ride the anger until I found something else worth feeling.
Did you?
Not yet. But today, watching you stand up to everyone in that cathedral, watching you refuse to sign that NDA and refuse to be ashamed of yourself, I felt something besides anger for the first time in 2 years.
What did you feel?
Respect. And maybe a little bit of hope that if you can find your fury after 8 months of being dimmed, maybe I can find something besides rage after 3 years of being dead inside. Elena's throat tightened.
That's the nicest thing anyone said to me in a very long time.
It's just the truth. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the kind of quiet that didn't need filling. Elena realized this was the first conversation she'd had in months where she didn't feel like she was performing or managing someone else's discomfort. Jax looked at her and saw Elena, not tragic wheelchair girl or inspiration porn or burden. Just Elena. Can I tell you something that's going to sound crazy? Elena asked. After the day you've had, I think you've earned some crazy.
I'm glad Brandon left. Not glad about the public humiliation or the financial disaster or any of that. But I'm glad he showed me who he really was before I wasted any more time trying to be someone he could love without effort.
Elena met Jax's eyes.
If he'd gone through with the wedding, I'd have spent the next 40 years trying to be smaller. Instead, I'm free. Broke and furious and free.
Free is good, Jax said. Free is where you start building something real. Outside, Rosa's voice carried through the diner's windows as she coordinated with what sounded like half the church congregation about tomorrow's moving logistics. Elena's phone buzzed with a text from Jenny, her former colleague from the hospital.
I saw the video. Are you okay? Call me.
Video. Of course there was video. Someone had recorded the whole cathedral disaster and posted it online. Elena pulled out her phone and searched her name. Sure enough, the first result was a shaky cell phone video titled, "Groom Abandons Paralyzed Bride at Altar." It had been posted 20 minutes ago and already had 15,000 views.
Oh, God,
Elena whispered. Jax leaned over to see the screen. That was fast.
Elena clicked play, watching herself from a stranger's perspective. The video started with Amanda's whispered conversation and caught Elena's entire confrontation, including her speech about apologizing for existing.
The comments section was already filling with opinions, half sympathetic and half debating whether Brandon had made the practical choice.
"This is going to be everywhere, isn't it?" Elena's hands shook. "Probably," Jax said honestly. "Does that change anything?" "I don't know. I told Trevor I wasn't making promises about staying quiet, but I didn't expect—" She gestured helplessly at the screen. "You didn't expect your truth to go viral." "I didn't expect my worst moment to become entertainment for strangers who think they have the right to judge whether I'm worthy of love." Jax's hand covered hers on the table, his palm warm and calloused and steady. "Anyone who watches that video and comes away thinking you're not worthy of love is someone whose opinion doesn't matter. You stood there with grace and honesty while your world fell apart. That's not weakness. That's steel wrapped in silk."
Elena looked at their hands, his scarred and large, hers trembling and small, and felt something shift in her chest. Not love, not yet, but possibility. The sense that maybe her story wasn't ending but beginning, and maybe the man sitting across from her understood that in ways nobody else could.
"I should probably go deal with this," Elena said reluctantly, "before it gets worse."
Or you could let it be what it is and focus on what matters, which is getting your stuff out of your ex's place and figuring out what comes next.
"And what comes next?"
Whatever you decide. You're the one with the power now, Elena. Use it. The video hit 10 million views by midnight. Elena sat in the church rectory's guest room, her phone exploding with notifications every few seconds. Friend requests from strangers, messages from disability advocacy groups, interview requests from local news stations, and, most disturbing, a flood of comments from people who thought they had the right to dissect her worthiness of love based on a 90-second clip. Rosa knocked softly before entering with tea Elena hadn't asked for, but definitely needed.
"You should turn that off. I can't. It's like watching a car accident involving my own life."
Elena scrolled through the comments, her stomach churning. Some were supportive, calling Brandon a coward and Elena an inspiration. Others were brutal, suggesting she should be grateful Brandon was honest about not wanting to be a caretaker, debating whether disabled people should marry at all, questioning if the whole thing was staged for attention.
"What are they saying?"
Rosa sat on the edge of the bed.
"That I'm brave? That I'm pathetic? That Brandon made the right choice? That he's scum? That I should have known better than to expect a man to commit to someone who can't walk? That disability doesn't define me? That I'm using my wheelchair for sympathy?"
Elena's voice cracked.
"Apparently everyone has an opinion about my life except the one opinion that actually matters, which is mine."
Her phone rang. Brandon's number. Elena stared at it for 3 rings before answering on speaker.
"What do you want?"
"Elena, thank God." Brandon's voice was tight with stress. "We need to talk about this video situation."
"We don't need to talk about anything. You said what you needed to say through your sister. I said what I needed to say to your assistant. We're done."
"This has gotten out of control. My firm's HR department called me in today. They're concerned about the optics of me abandoning my disabled fiancé at the altar. It's affecting my professional reputation." Elena laughed, the sound sharp enough to cut glass.
"Your professional reputation? Of course, because that's what matters here."
"Don't be like that. You know I didn't want to hurt you. I panicked, okay? But this video is making me look like a monster, and I need you to post something clarifying that it was a mutual decision, that we both realized the relationship wasn't working."
"Except it wasn't mutual, Brandon. You left. Via your sister. 30 minutes before our wedding. There's nothing mutual about that. Elena, please, be reasonable. This is hurting both of us. If you post a statement saying we parted amicably, that it was about compatibility and not your disability. But it was about my disability, Elena interrupted. That's the truth you're so desperate to avoid. You couldn't handle being married to a woman in a wheelchair, and instead of having the courage to admit that months ago, you strung me along until the literal last minute. That's not fair, Brandon's voice rose. I tried. I went to every doctor's appointment, every physical therapy session.
I researched accessibility equipment and modified my apartment and learned about spinal cord injuries.
I did everything I could, except love me.
Elena's words landed with the weight of absolute truth.
You performed support while resenting every second of it. You made me feel like my existence was a burden you were nobly bearing, instead of a life we were building together. And when the pressure of actually committing became real, you ran. I'm not the villain here. I never said you were. I said you were weak. There's a difference.
Elena felt something solidifying in her chest, anger transmuting into clarity.
You want me to lie about what happened so you can protect your reputation at a tech firm that apparently cares more about optics than character. But here's the thing, Brandon. I'm done making myself smaller to make you more comfortable.
You're being vindictive.
I'm being honest.
For the first time in 8 months, I'm saying exactly what I think without filtering it through your comfort level. If that feels like vindictiveness, maybe examine why the truth hurts so much. Brandon's breathing was audible through the phone. Fine. If you won't cooperate, I'll have to pursue other options. My attorney says I have grounds for a lawsuit based on emotional distress and reputational damage.
Your attorney is welcome to try. I'm sure a judge will be very sympathetic to the man who abandoned his paralyzed fiancée at the altar because she was too inconvenient to love.
Elena's voice was ice.
I'll be at your apartment tomorrow at 10 to collect my belongings. Have your attorney there if you want. I'll bring witnesses.
She hung up before he could respond. Rosa was watching her with an expression Elena couldn't quite read.
What?
Elena asked.
You're your abuela's granddaughter. She would be proud.
Rosa smiled. That woman never let anyone make her feel small. And neither will you. Elena's phone buzzed again. This time it was Jack's. Saw the video. Numbers keep climbing. You okay? She typed back.
No, but I'm functional. Moving my stuff tomorrow at 10. Brandon's threatening lawsuits.
3 dots appeared, then, want backup? MC can provide an impressive escort if needed. Elena smiled despite everything.
That might make things worse.
Or it might make Brandon think twice about starting legal battles he can't win. Your call. Rosa was reading over her shoulder without shame. Take the bikers. Men like Brandon respect displays of strength. If you show up alone, he'll think you're vulnerable. If you show up with a motorcycle club, he'll remember that you have people who fight for you.
Mama, I can't ask them to. You're not asking. They're offering. There's a difference.
Rosa's expression turned calculating. Besides, if this Brandon wants to play games with attorneys and reputation damage, he should understand that you're not playing alone. Elena hesitated, then texted Jax.
How many members could you bring?
How many do you need?
Enough to make a point without starting a war?
I can work with that. We'll be there. The next morning arrived with spring sunshine that felt obscenely cheerful given the circumstances. Elena dressed carefully in jeans and a simple blouse, pulling her hair back in a ponytail. She looked like herself, not the diminished version she'd been performing for Brandon's benefit. 6 Harleys pulled up outside the church rectory at 9:30. Jax led the formation, with Tank and 4 other Mongols members Elena didn't know. They all wore their full club colors, patches announcing their affiliation to anyone paying attention. Rosa came outside with Elena, carrying 2 empty boxes.
Buenos dias, gentlemen. Thank you for helping my daughter.
Tank, the massive bald man from the diner, nodded respectfully. Ma'am, we don't leave our own hanging, and Reaper says Elena's good people.
I'm not part of your club,
Elena pointed out. No, but you're important to Reaper, which makes you someone we look out for. Tank's expression was matter-of-fact, like this was the most obvious thing in the world. Plus, any woman who tells off her coward ex-fiancé on camera deserves backup. Jax helped Elena into the club's van, a modified vehicle with a wheelchair lift that apparently got used for Pops and other members who needed accessibility. The other Mongols followed on their bikes, creating a procession that turned heads at every intersection. Brandon's Lincoln Park penthouse occupied the 15th floor of a building that cost more per month than most people earned in a year. The doorman's expression when he saw 6 Mongols members enter the lobby was worth screenshotting.
Miss Rivera is on the approved list,
Elena told him.
These gentlemen are helping me move. I'll need to call Mr. Caldwell to confirm.
No need. Brandon appeared from the elevator, flanked by a man in an expensive suit who had to be his attorney. Elena's belongings are packed. She can collect them and leave.
Packed?
Elena's voice went dangerously quiet.
You packed my things?
I thought it would be more efficient. Brandon's eyes kept flickering to the Mongols, particularly to Tank, who looked like he could bench press a sedan. And I wanted to ensure you only took items that belonged to you.
Meaning what, exactly?
Jax stepped forward slightly, not threatening, but definitely present. Meaning, some of the adaptive equipment and furniture were gifts from me, and I'd like to retain them for tax purposes. Elena felt rage bloom hot and bright in her chest.
The wheelchair? The grab bars in the bathroom? The shower chair? Those are gifts, Brandon. Those are medical equipment I need to function.
Which I paid for, which my insurance partially covered, and which you offered to help purchase when we were planning our future together. Gifts given during a relationship don't come with retroactive terms and conditions. Brandon's attorney stepped forward. Mr. Caldwell is within his rights to reclaim property purchased with his funds, especially given the deterioration of the relationship and the public statements Miss Rivera has made that could constitute defamation.
Defamation?
Elena almost laughed.
I told the truth. That's the opposite of defamation.
You've damaged his reputation and professional standing with allegations that he abandoned you due to your disability.
It's not an allegation if it's what happened.
Tank's voice was surprisingly calm. We all saw the video. He left. She stayed. Those are facts. The attorney opened his mouth to respond, but Jax cut him off. Here's what's going to happen. Len is going to collect her belongings, which includes any medical equipment prescribed by her doctors or purchased for her use. She's going to take her personal possessions, her clothes, her photographs, and anything else that belongs to her. You're not going to challenge any of it, because attempting to withhold a disabled person's medical equipment is not only morally reprehensible, but potentially illegal under ADA regulations. The Americans with Disabilities Act doesn't apply to personal relationships. But interference with a disabled person's access to necessary medical equipment could constitute abuse or neglect in civil court, and I'm betting Mr. Caldwell's fancy law firm doesn't want that kind of publicity on top of the viral video. Jax's voice never rose, but it carried absolute conviction. So let's all be adults here. Elena takes what's hers, you keep what's yours. Everyone moves on with their lives. Brandon's face had gone pale. Fine, take it all. I don't care anymore.
You never did,
Elena said quietly.
That was always the problem.
The apartment looked exactly as Elena remembered,
Except all her belongings were indeed boxed up and stacked near the door. Brandon had been thorough, she'd give him that. Every trace of her 8-month occupancy was packed away like she'd never existed. Rosa and Mrs. Delgado arrived with the church's van just as the Mongols started loading boxes. The operation was efficient and surprisingly gentle, these rough-looking men handling Elena's possessions with more care than Brandon ever had. In the bedroom she'd shared with Brandon, Elena found one box labeled personal items in his neat handwriting. Inside was the framed photo of her parents that used to sit on the nightstand, her abuela's rosary, a stuffed elephant she'd had since childhood, and a stack of birthday cards from her mother. Brandon had separated these items specifically, and Elena didn't know if it was a kindness or just his categorizing obsession. At the bottom of the box was a small velvet jewelry case. Elena opened it to find her engagement ring, the modest diamond that had represented promises he never intended to keep. There was a note underneath. "I'm sorry it ended this way. You deserved better than I could give you. Keep the ring or sell it. Either way, I hope you find happiness. B." The apology felt hollow, but Elena took the ring anyway. Not for sentimental reasons, but because selling it would help with first month's rent wherever she ended up living. "You okay?" Jax appeared in the doorway. "Yeah, just processing." Elena held up the ring. "He's sorry, apparently." "Sorry he got caught, or sorry he hurt you?" "Does it matter?" "Probably not." Jax studied her face. "We're almost unloading. Is there anything else you need?" Elena looked around the bedroom one last time. The California king bed where she'd slept fitfully for months, wondering why Brandon felt so distant. The closet where half her clothes had hung untouched because Brandon preferred her in certain colors and styles. The ensuite bathroom with its expensive adaptive equipment that he'd resented paying for despite the tax deductions. "No, there's nothing here I want." She turned her wheelchair toward the door, then paused. "Actually, wait." She rolled to Brandon's home office, the one room she'd rarely entered because it was his space. His desk was pristine, organized with the obsessive precision he brought to everything. Elena opened the top drawer and found what she was looking for: the flash drive containing the wedding slideshow they'd planned to show at the reception. Brandon appeared in the doorway. "What are you doing?" "Taking the slideshow. I paid the photographer for those images." Elena pocketed the flash drive. "Those were for our wedding." "A wedding that didn't happen because you left. The photos are mine." Elena met his eyes directly. "Unless you want to add theft of intellectual property to the list of grievances your attorney is compiling." Brandon's jaw clenched. "Keep it. Keep everything. I just want this over." "Then stop threatening lawsuits you have no intention of following through on. Stop trying to control the narrative. Stop pretending you're the victim here." Elena's voice was steady, each word deliberate. "You made a choice yesterday. A cowardly, hurtful choice, but a choice nonetheless. Own it. Move on. Find someone who fits into your life without requiring you to grow as a human being." "You think you're so much better than me now, because you have your biker bodyguards and your viral video making you look like a saint." Brandon's composure finally cracked. "But you know what, Elena? You're not easy to love. You're not easy to be with. Every single thing required planning and accommodation and effort. And I'm sorry, but eventually that gets exhausting." "I know," Elena said, and Brandon blinked in surprise. "I know I'm not easy. I know loving me requires effort and flexibility and constant problem solving. I know my disability complicates things that are simple for other couples. But here's what you never understood, Brandon. The right person doesn't see that as a burden. The right person sees it as an adventure, as a challenge worth rising to, as an opportunity to be creative and strong and present, in ways they never imagined. And you think you'll find that mythical person? Someone who actually wants to deal with all your complications? Jax's voice came from behind Brandon, calm but edged with steel. She already has. Brandon turned, taking in Jax's considerable size and the complete lack of fear in his expression. You've known her for what, a day? Long enough to recognize something real when I see it. Long enough to understand that Elena's complications are just life, and life requires showing up even when it's hard. Jax stepped into the office. Your problem isn't that Elena's difficult. Your problem is that you're weak, and you're trying to make your weakness her fault. Who the hell do you think you are? Someone who actually knows what sacrifice looks like. Someone who's watched good people die and learned that the privilege of loving someone, anyone, is not something you waste because it requires effort. Jax's voice dropped lower. I've held dying soldiers who would have given anything for one more day with the people they loved, who begged me to tell their families they were sorry for leaving too soon. And you threw away a woman who loved you because she wasn't convenient enough. So yeah, I know exactly who I am. The question is, do you? Brandon's face went from pale to red. Get out. All of you. Now. We're going, Elena said. And Brandon, if you do file that lawsuit, I'll countersue for emotional distress, breach of promise, and fraudulent misrepresentation. I have 8 months of text messages where you promised you were committed to our relationship while secretly resenting me. I have emails to your friends where you complained about being trapped by obligation. And I have the testimony of every person who watched you systematically diminish my confidence and independence while pretending to be supportive. You've been collecting evidence? Brandon looked genuinely shocked. I'm not stupid. I knew something was wrong. I just didn't want to believe the man I loved was documenting his resentment in writing. Elena backed her wheelchair toward the door. File your lawsuit if you want, but be prepared for discovery to expose exactly who you are. Tank was waiting in the hallway with the last box. We're loaded. Ready to roll? More than ready. Elena took one last look at the apartment that had never really been home. Let's go. The elevator ride down was silent, except for the mechanical hum of descent. When they reached the lobby, a woman with a camera and microphone was waiting with a small crew. Miss Rivera, I'm Jessica Chen from Channel 7 News. Could we ask you a few questions about the viral video? Elena's instinct was to refuse, to hide, to protect her privacy. But then she thought about all the comments debating her worthiness, all the people who thought they understood her life based on 90 seconds of footage, all the disabled people who were watching to see if she'd shrink or stand tall. Sure, Elena said. What do you want to know? Jessica's eyebrows rose, clearly not expecting agreement. Well, the video has sparked a national conversation about disability and relationships. What would you like to say to people who are following your story? Elena took a breath, aware of the camera focusing on her, aware of the Mongols standing protectively behind her, aware that whatever she said next would probably be dissected by millions of strangers. I'd like to say that disability doesn't make someone less worthy of love. It makes love more honest. When you're with someone who needs accommodations, you can't coast on autopilot. You have to show up. You have to communicate. You have to be creative and flexible and genuinely present. And if you can't do that, if you view your partner's needs as burdens instead of opportunities to demonstrate your commitment, then you're not ready for real love anyway. Are you angry at your ex-fiancé? I'm disappointed in him and in myself for accepting less than I deserved for so long. But I'm also grateful that he showed me the truth before we made vows that would have been meaningless. Elena met the camera directly.
To everyone watching who has a disability and wonders if they're too much, too complicated, too difficult to love, you're not. You're exactly enough. The right person will see your worth without you having to diminish yourself to prove it. What's next for you? Elena smiled, surprising herself with the genuine joy in the expression. I'm going to rebuild my life on my own terms. I'm going to stop apologizing for existing. And I'm going to help other people understand that accessibility isn't charity, it's justice. The interview ended, and Jax helped guide her wheelchair through the gathering crowd. Someone in the lobby started clapping, then someone else joined. Within seconds, the entire lobby was applauding, strangers celebrating her strength without knowing anything else about her. Rosa was crying in the church van, watching the live broadcast on her phone. Mi hija hermosa, you are making history. Elena wasn't sure about that, but she knew she was making a choice. The choice to be visible instead of invisible, loud instead of quiet, complicated instead of convenient. And for the first time in 8 months, that choice felt like power instead of burden. By the time they reached the church rectory, the interview had been posted online and was already trending. Elena's phone was exploding again, but this time the messages felt different. Disability rights organizations wanting to partner, lawyers offering pro bono representation if Brandon filed suit, speaking invitations, job offers from therapy practices that valued her perspective. And one message from an unknown number. You don't know me, but I'm a T6 paraplegic who was engaged before my accident. My fiancé left too. Seeing you stand up for yourself gave me courage to stop hiding. Thank you. Elena showed the message to Jax. This is happening too fast. I don't know what to do with all of this. You do what you did today. You tell the truth, and you let the consequences unfold. Jax hesitated, then added, and you let people help you. You don't have to carry everything alone. Rosa appeared with more tea and the announcement that Father Miguel wanted to discuss Elena potentially running a support group for disabled parishioners at the church. Mrs. Delgado brought news that her nephew, the one who'd returned from Iraq with PTSD, wanted to talk to Jax about the VA counseling program. Tank mentioned that Pops, the wheelchair-using club member, wanted to meet Elena and discuss adaptive motorcycle options. The community was assembling around her, piece by piece, building support systems she hadn't known existed. Elena had spent 8 months in isolation, trapped in Brandon's penthouse with only his filtered version of reality. Now the world was opening up, full of possibilities, and people who understood that different didn't mean less. I need air, Elena said suddenly. Is there somewhere we can go? Somewhere quiet? Jax nodded immediately. I know a place. Jax's place turned out to be a lakefront park with accessible trails that wound through trees just starting to green with spring growth. They sat near the water, Elena's wheelchair positioned so she could see boats cutting white paths across Lake Michigan's gray-blue surface. I come here when the noise gets too loud, Jax said, after bad sessions at the VA, or when the nightmares won't stop, or when I need to remember why I'm still breathing. Does it help? Sometimes. The water doesn't judge, doesn't ask questions, just keeps moving forward no matter what. He turned to look at her. You did good today, standing up to him like that. I didn't have a choice. He was trying to take my medical equipment. Elena's hands trembled slightly on her push rims. Do you know what that means? Without my shower chair, I can't bathe safely. Without the grab bars, I can't transfer independently. He was literally trying to strip away my autonomy out of spite. He's scared, Jax said. Men like that, when they lose control of the narrative, they lash out. The lawsuit threat is just him trying to regain power. Will he actually file? Probably. His attorney looked expensive enough to be stupid. Jax stretched his legs out, his boots scuffed from years of hard riding. But here's the thing about legal battles. They require sustained effort over time. Brandon doesn't strike me as someone who commits when things get difficult. Elena's phone buzzed, another unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer.
Miss Rivera, this is Dr. Sarah Okonkwo from Northwestern Memorial Hospital. I saw your interview this morning, and I'd like to discuss a position we have opening in our pediatric rehabilitation department.
Elena's breath caught. I'm sorry, what? We're looking for a physical therapist who specializes in pediatric cases, particularly children with mobility challenges. Your combination of clinical expertise and personal experience with disability makes you an ideal candidate. Would you be interested in interviewing? Yes, I would. Elena's mind raced. But you should know, I was let go from Children's Memorial because they considered my wheelchair a liability.
I'm aware. I also know their loss is our potential gain. Children's Memorial has antiquated views on disability in the workplace. We don't.
Dr. Okonkwo's voice was brisk but kind.
We have 3 therapists on staff who use mobility devices. We find their lived experience makes them more effective, not less. Can you come in Thursday at 2? I'll be there.
Elena hung up, staring at her phone in disbelief.
Good news? Jax asked. A job interview. At Northwestern.
They want me specifically because of my wheelchair, not in spite of it. Elena felt tears threatening.
I've been unemployed for 8 months. I thought my career was over.
Your career was just beginning. You were stuck in the wrong place. Jax's phone buzzed, and his expression darkened as he read the screen. Brandon just posted on social media. You should probably see this. Elena pulled up Brandon's Facebook page. He'd written a long post about the difficulties of being in a relationship with a disabled person, framing himself as someone who'd tried his best but ultimately couldn't handle the burden. He mentioned the emotional toll, the financial strain, the loss of freedom. He made himself the victim and Elena the weight that crushed him. The comments were already flooding in, split between people calling him brave for his honesty and people recognizing the manipulation in every word.
He's doubling down, Elena said quietly.
He's actually trying to make this about how hard my disability was on him.
Give it an hour. The internet will eat him alive.
Jax was right. Within minutes, disability advocates were systematically dismantling Brandon's narrative, pointing out the ableism in his language, the entitlement in his framing, the cruelty in his public blame-shifting. But then Elena's phone rang again. Trevor, Brandon's assistant.
Miss Rivera, I'm calling to inform you that Mr. Caldwell has filed a civil suit for defamation and emotional distress. You'll be served papers within 48 hours.
He's actually doing this. Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach.
He is. And, Miss Rivera, I quit this morning. I couldn't work for someone who would weaponize the legal system against his ex-fiancée for telling the truth. I'm willing to testify on your behalf if needed.
Why would you do that?
Because I have a sister with cerebral palsy, and watching Mr.
Caldwell treat you like a problem to manage made me sick. She deserves better than the world he's trying to create. So do you. Trevor paused. I have copies of emails and memos that might be useful for your defense. He's been documenting his burden for months, but framing it as justification for leaving rather than evidence of his character. Elena's mind spun.
Trevor, that could cost you professionally.
Maybe, but staying silent would cost me something more important. He gave her his personal number. Call me when you get served.
I'll connect you with the evidence." After hanging up, Elena told Jax what Trevor had said. "So Brandon's former assistant is willing to burn his career to help you." Jax smiled slightly. "You're collecting allies fast." "I don't want allies. I want to be left alone to rebuild my life." But even as Elena said it, she knew it wasn't true. The interview this morning, the messages from disabled people finding courage in her story, the job offer from Northwestern, these weren't burdens. They were purpose crystallizing from pain. "You don't get to choose invisibility anymore," Jax said, reading her expression. "Not after going viral. Not after becoming the face of something bigger than just your personal story." "I'm not qualified to be anyone's face. I'm broke, homeless, and apparently being sued by my ex-fiancé." "You're honest, angry in all the right ways, and you refused to shrink when the world expected you to. That's more qualification than most people have." Jax turned to face her fully. "Elena, I've been doing veteran counseling for 2 years. I've seen hundreds of people struggle with trauma and loss and fundamental changes to their identity. You know what the successful ones have in common?" "What?" "They stop fighting who they've become and start building from where they are. They accept that the old life is gone, and the new life requires different skills, different support, different ways of measuring success." His voice softened. "You're doing that. In real time. In public. And people are watching, because they need to see someone do it successfully." "What if I fail?" "Then you fail publicly, and show people that failure isn't the end. That getting back up matters more than never falling." Jax hesitated, then reached for her hand. "I'm not good at this. At connecting. At being vulnerable. But watching you find your strength is helping me find mine." Elena looked at their joined hands, his scarred and calloused, hers trembling with adrenaline. "You said you come here when the noise gets too loud. What's the noise?" "Screaming. From the soldiers I couldn't save. Jake Reeves calling for his wife while he bled out. The explosion replaying on loop. My own voice telling me I should have been faster, smarter, better." Jax's grip tightened. "It's been 3 years, and it hasn't gotten quieter, just more familiar." "Are you in therapy?" "Was. Stopped 6 months ago because I thought I'd plateaued. Turns out I was just avoiding the hardest work." He met her eyes. "Watching you confront your truth made me realize I've been hiding from mine." "What truth?" "That I don't want to just survive anymore. I want to actually live. And that scares me more than any combat situation ever did." Elena understood that fear intimately. Survival was straightforward. Wake up, function, repeat. Living required hope, vulnerability, the risk of caring about outcomes instead of just enduring them. "What if we're both terrible at this?" Elena asked. "At living instead of surviving?" "Then we'll be terrible together. Seems better than being terrible alone." Rosa's voice cut through the moment. She was calling from the parking lot, waving her arms. "Elena, turn on your phone's news app, now!" Elena pulled up the app and felt her stomach drop. The headline read, "Tech Executives Ableist Meltdown. Brandon Caldwell's employer responds to viral controversy." The article detailed how Brandon's firm, Tech Venture Capital, had placed him on administrative leave pending an investigation into workplace discrimination. Apparently, 3 employees had come forward with complaints about Brandon's treatment of a colleague who used a prosthetic leg, including emails where Brandon questioned the employee's ability to travel for client meetings. "He discriminated against someone else," Elena breathed. "This wasn't just about me." The article continued, quoting Tech Venture's CEO. "We take allegations of discrimination extremely seriously. If these claims are substantiated, Mr. Caldwell's employment will be terminated immediately.
Our company values diversity and inclusion, and we will not tolerate behavior that creates hostile environments for employees with disabilities.
Jax was reading over her shoulder. His whole world is imploding. Good. Elena felt no satisfaction, just exhausted relief. Maybe he'll drop the lawsuit now.
But 30 minutes later, the process server found them in the park. A woman in business casual approached with papers, her expression apologetic.
Elena Rivera, you've been served.
The lawsuit was exactly as petty as Elena expected. Brandon was suing for $500,000, claiming her public statements had caused irreparable harm to his reputation and career prospects, that her viral interview constituted defamation, that her refusal to sign the NDA demonstrated malicious intent. Jax read the filing, his expression darkening. This is garbage. Everything you said was true, which is an absolute defense against defamation, and his career problems stem from his own documented discrimination, not your statements.
I can't afford an attorney to fight this.
Elena's voice was small. You won't need to pay. Tank knows a lawyer who specializes in disability rights cases, does some pro bono work for veterans too. Jax was already texting.
She'll eviscerate this.
Rosa arrived with Mrs. Delgado, both women vibrating with protective fury.
That boy is going to regret this,
Rosa declared.
Father Miguel is calling the diocese attorney. The church has resources for parishioners facing unjust legal action. Mama, I can't ask the church to. You're not asking. We're offering. That's what community means.
Rosa's phone rang. She answered, listened for 30 seconds, and her face went pale.
Elena, it's Children's Memorial Hospital. Dr. Owens wants to talk to you. She says it's urgent.
Elena took the phone, confused.
Dr. Owens?
Elena, I need to apologize, personally and professionally. Dr. Owen's voice was tight with emotion. I just learned that your termination wasn't actually an insurance liability issue. It was pushed by one administrator who has a history of discriminatory practices. She's being investigated now, and the hospital board wants to offer you reinstatement with back pay and a formal apology.
What?
Elena couldn't process the words. Your viral interview triggered an internal review. 3 other employees came forward with similar stories of being pushed out due to disability. The administrator in question fabricated the insurance concerns to justify terminations that were purely discriminatory. Dr. Owens paused. I should have fought harder for you. I knew something felt wrong, but I trusted the system instead of my instincts. I'm sorry.
You're offering me my old job back.
With a raise and a promotion to senior therapist. And we'd like you to consult on improving our accessibility policies and staff training around disability inclusion, if you're interested. Elena's head spun.
I have an interview at Northwestern on Thursday.
Then you have options, which is what you should have had 8 months ago. Dr. Owen's voice softened. Whatever you decide, I want you to know that you were an exceptional therapist. Your disability didn't diminish that. It enhanced it. After hanging up, Elena stared at Jax.
I have 2 job offers. 2. Yesterday I had nothing, and today I'm choosing between hospitals.
The universe is course-correcting, Rosa said firmly. You were pushed down, so now you're being lifted up. It's balance. But the day wasn't finished. Elena's phone rang again, this time a number she didn't recognize, but a voice she'd never forget. Miss Rivera, this is Marcus Anderson. You saved my life 8 months ago on the subway platform. Elena's breath stopped.
Marcus?
I'm 17 now. I saw your video. My mom saw it too. She wanted me to call because... He paused, and Elena heard tears in his voice.
Because we never properly thanked you.
We brought flowers to the hospital once, but then we didn't know how to stay in touch, and I felt so guilty that you got hurt because of me.
Marcus, you have nothing to feel guilty about. Yes, I do. You're in a wheelchair because I was being stupid, because I wasn't paying attention. The words tumbled out. And then I saw your interview, and you were so strong and brave, and I realized I've been wasting the life you saved for me. I've been getting in trouble at school, fighting with my parents, acting like nothing matters because I felt so guilty. Marcus, listen to me. What happened wasn't your fault. It was an accident. And what I did, pulling you back, was a choice I made, and would make again. Elena's voice strengthened. But if you want to honor that choice, then you honor it by living fully, by being kind and strong, and using your life for good things. Can you do that? I want to. I've been so lost. Then let's help you find your way. Give me your mom's number.
I know some good counselors who work with teenagers dealing with trauma and guilt.
Elena felt purpose solidifying. You don't have to carry this alone. After taking down the information and promising to connect Marcus with resources, Elena handed the phone back to Rosa. Jax was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. What? She asked. You just collected your second client in the advocacy work you're building. First, the message from the stranger with a T6 injury. Now Marcus. You're already doing the work before you've even formalized the organization. Elena realized he was right. Without planning it, without credentials or nonprofit status or funding, she was already helping people navigate the intersection of trauma and disability. The work was finding her, not the other way around. Tank appeared at the park entrance, waving them over. Got a situation. Need you both at the clubhouse. They followed Tank to the Mongols' meeting space, a converted warehouse that served as headquarters for the Chicago chapter. Inside, about 30 club members were gathered, along with Pops, the Vietnam veteran who used a wheelchair similar to Elena's. Pops rolled forward, extending a weathered hand.
Elena Rivera. Heard a lot about you from Reaper. Wanted to meet the woman who's got the whole internet talking about disability rights.
Nice to meet you, sir.
No sir necessary. Just Pops. He grinned. Tank tells me you might need some backup for this lawsuit nonsense.
I have attorneys offering help.
Attorneys handle the legal side. We handle the pressure side.
Tank's expression was serious.
Brandon Caldwell needs to understand that harassing you comes with consequences, not violent ones, he added quickly, seeing Elena's expression. But social ones. Public ones. The kind that make a man reconsider his choices.
I don't want anyone getting in trouble because of me.
We're not getting in trouble. We're exercising our constitutional rights to peaceful assembly and free speech. Tank pulled out his phone, showing Elena a Facebook page titled, Stand with Elena, Disability Rights Matter. It had been created an hour ago and already had 50,000 followers. We're organizing a rally outside the courthouse when Brandon's lawsuit gets filed. Disability advocates, veterans groups, civil rights organizations. We're making noise.
This is too much. I'm just one person.
You're the face of something bigger now, Pops interrupted. Like it or not. And faces need protection, especially when they're challenging power structures that prefer disabled people stay quiet and grateful for scraps. Jax squeezed Elena's shoulder. You don't have to decide anything right now, but you should know what support is available when you need it. Rosa had been talking quietly with several club members' wives in the corner. She returned with determined expression. The church is hosting a fundraiser Sunday. For your legal fees and to start your advocacy organization properly. Father Miguel already approved it. Mama, I haven't even decided if I want to start an organization. The organization already exists. You're already doing the work.
We're just making it official.
Rosa's tone left no room for argument.
You can fight us if you want, but you'll lose. Rivera women don't back down, and neither do the people who love them.
Elena looked around the room at these people. Bikers, church ladies, veterans, strangers who'd become allies in less than 48 hours, and felt something shift in her chest. Not the crushing weight she'd carried for 8 months, but something lighter, something like hope. Okay, she said quietly. Okay, let's do this.
The room erupted in affirmations and planning. Tank immediately started coordinating with other motorcycle clubs. Rosa pulled out her phone to call Father Miguel with updates. Pops rolled over to discuss adaptive motorcycle options with Jax. In the chaos, Elena found herself next to a woman she hadn't noticed before. Mid-40s, expensive suit, carrying herself with the confidence of someone used to commanding rooms.
Elena Rivera? I'm attorney Sarah Park. I specialize in disability discrimination and civil rights law. I'd like to represent you pro bono in the defamation case. Pro bono means free, right? It means I work for the principal, not the paycheck. And this case? This is about establishing precedent that disabled people can speak their truth without being legally punished for making abled people uncomfortable. Sarah's smile was sharp. Plus, dismantling bad faith defamation suits is kind of my specialty. I haven't lost one yet. Why would you do this for free? Because I'm a wheelchair user too. C5 to C6 injury from a car accident 15 years ago.
And I remember what it felt like when people tried to silence me for refusing to be inspirational and grateful and quiet. Sarah handed Elena her card.
Brandon Caldwell picked the wrong woman to bully with legal threats. We're going to make him regret it.
Elena took the card, feeling the last piece click into place. She had jobs to choose from, legal representation, community support, and purpose that stretched beyond survival into actual meaning. Jax appeared at her side as the meeting wound down. You okay? This is a lot in one day.
I'm terrified, Elena admitted. But I'm also more alive than I've been in 8 months. Maybe years.
Good. Terror means you're feeling again. That's progress. He hesitated, then asked, Can I take you to dinner? Actual dinner, like a date, not crisis management at a diner.
Elena smiled. Are you asking me out?
Badly, apparently. But yes, if you want.
I want.
She did want, desperately, this connection with someone who saw her clearly without flinching.
But, Jax, I'm a mess. I'm broke and unemployed and being sued and probably about to become even more publicly visible. I'm not a good bet right now.
Neither am I. I'm broken and angry and wake up screaming 3 nights a week from nightmares I can't control. We're both disasters. Jax's expression softened. But maybe disasters understand each other better than well-adjusted people ever could.
Maybe they do,
Elena agreed. And for the first time since the subway accident, she felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. The dinner date happened 3 days later at a Thai restaurant Jax knew that had been accessibility-friendly since before it was legally required. Elena wore jeans and a blue blouse that Rosa insisted brought out her eyes, and for the first time in months, she felt like herself instead of a performance of what someone else needed her to be. Jax was already waiting when she arrived, wearing dark jeans and a button-down shirt instead of his usual leather vest. The effort touched her more than flowers would have.
You clean up nice,
Elena said, maneuvering her wheelchair to the table. So do you, though I'm starting to think you look good in anything. Jax's smile was tentative, like he was out of practice with genuine joy.
They ordered pad thai and green curry, and for the first hour, they talked about everything except disabilities and trauma and viral videos. Elena learned that Jax had wanted to be a doctor before the military, that he played guitar badly but enthusiastically, that he'd read every Hemingway novel twice. Jax discovered that Elena spoke 3 languages, that she'd wanted to travel before her accident made international accessibility complicated, that she had a secret addiction to terrible reality TV. But eventually, the conversation turned serious.
Brandon's attorney called my lawyer today, Elena said. They want to settle out of court. They'll drop the lawsuit if I delete the interview video and post a public apology saying I exaggerated the circumstances of our breakup. What did you say? I said no. Sarah Park told them if they proceed with the suit, she'll countersue for malicious prosecution and abusive process. She also mentioned that Trevor's documentation of Brandon's discriminatory behavior makes his case essentially unwinnable. Elena took a sip of water. They're desperate. Brandon's employer is conducting a formal investigation, and if he loses his job, the lawsuit becomes even more absurd. Good. Let him squirm. Jax's expression hardened. Men like that need to learn that actions have consequences. I keep waiting to feel vindicated, but mostly I just feel tired. Elena pushed curry around her plate. The interview has been viewed 20 million times now. I get hundreds of messages daily from disabled people sharing their stories, from parents of disabled children asking for advice, from complete strangers who think they know me because they saw 90 seconds of my worst day. That's a lot to carry. It is, but some of the messages are beautiful. A woman in Ohio said watching me stand up to Brandon gave her courage to leave her abusive husband. A teenager in Texas who uses a wheelchair said my interview helped him explain to his parents why their pity hurt more than his disability. A mother in Florida thanked me because her autistic son finally felt seen. Elena's voice thickened. How do I turn away from that? How do I go back to being private when going public is helping people? You don't. You lean into it and build something sustainable so you don't burn out. Jax reached across the table, his hand finding hers. But you also remember that you're a person, not just a symbol. You get to have boundaries. The restaurant door opened, and Elena's stomach dropped. Brandon walked in with a woman Elena didn't recognize. Blonde, polished, definitely not Catherine Westbrook from the engagement announcement. Brandon saw Elena immediately, his face going pale. Ignore him, Jack said quietly, though his posture had shifted into something more alert. But Brandon was already approaching their table, the blonde woman trailing behind with obvious discomfort. Elena, I didn't expect to see you here. Brandon's voice was tight. It's a public restaurant, Brandon. I'm allowed to exist in spaces you frequent. Elena kept her tone neutral. I just wanted to say, he paused, struggling. The lawsuit was my attorney's idea. I never wanted things to get this ugly. Then drop it. Tell your attorney to file a dismissal tomorrow. Elena met his eyes directly. Or admit that you're using legal intimidation to punish me for telling the truth. The blonde woman stepped forward. I'm sorry. I told him this was a bad idea. We should go. No, Madison, it's fine. Brandon's jaw clenched. Elena, you have to understand. That video destroyed my reputation. I've lost my job, my friends won't return my calls, my family is ashamed of me. You turned me into a villain. I told the truth about what you did. If that made you look like a villain, maybe examine your actions instead of blaming my honesty. Elena's voice was steel wrapped in silk. You left me at the altar, Brandon, via your sister. After 8 months of treating my disability like a burden, you were nobly tolerating. Those are facts, not character assassination. I tried to love you. No. You tried to manage me. There's a difference. Elena felt Jax's hand tighten around hers, anchoring her. Love requires seeing someone completely and choosing them anyway. You saw my wheelchair and decided I was too difficult, too complicated, too much work. That's not love.
That's cowardice dressed up as practicality. Madison touched Brandon's arm.
Brandon, please. Let's just go.
Who's she? Elena asked, genuine curiosity cutting through the tension. Madison is... We met at a support group for people dealing with difficult breakups. Brandon had the grace to look embarrassed.
A support group?
Elena almost laughed.
You're attending a support group because leaving your paralyzed fiancé at the altar was traumatic for you?
It was traumatic. Do you have any idea what it's like to love someone but know you're not strong enough to handle their needs? To feel like you're drowning in responsibility and guilt and... Stop. Jax's voice was quiet, but carried absolute authority. You're explaining your feelings to a woman who spent 8 months apologizing for existing because you made her believe her disability was a burden. You want sympathy for feeling overwhelmed? Talk to your therapist, but don't come to her table and make your weakness her problem again. Brandon's face flushed.
Who the hell are you to judge me?
Someone who knows what real sacrifice looks like. Someone who's held dying friends and learned that the privilege of loving anyone is not something you waste because it requires effort. Jax stood slowly, his considerable size suddenly very apparent. You had a good woman who loved you, and you threw her away because she wasn't convenient enough. Now you're mad because the world saw exactly who you are. That's not Elena's fault. That's yours. Madison was pulling Brandon toward the door.
Come on, this isn't helping anything.
But Brandon had one more thing to say.
You think you're better than me because you're willing to deal with her complications? Give it 6 months, a year. See how you feel when every restaurant requires calling ahead, when every vacation needs accessibility research, when people stare everywhere you go.
See if you still think it's worth it. Elena felt the words land like punches, each one hitting the insecurities she'd been carrying since the accident. But Jax's response was immediate and devastating. I've been to war. I've watched good people die screaming. I've lived with survivor's guilt that makes every day feel like penance I don't deserve. His voice was absolutely calm. Calling ahead to restaurants? Researching accessibility? That's not hardship. That's just logistics. And if you think Elena's wheelchair is the complication, you never understood her at all. She's not complicated because she's disabled. She's complicated because she's a complete human being with thoughts and feelings and needs. You know, like every other person in a relationship. Brandon stared at Jax for a long moment, then turned and left without another word. Madison mouthed, "I'm sorry," to Elena before following him out. The restaurant had gone quiet, other diners pretending not to have witnessed the confrontation. Elena's hands were shaking, adrenaline flooding her system.
I need air,
she said quietly. They paid quickly and went outside. The spring evening was cool, and Elena wrapped her arms around herself despite the temperature being perfectly comfortable.
He's right about some of it,
Elena said finally.
Dating me is more complicated. Logistics are harder. People do stare.
So what? Jax knelt beside her wheelchair, bringing them to eye level. Elena, loving anyone is complicated. My ex-girlfriend couldn't handle my PTSD. She left because my nightmares scared her, because I couldn't do crowds or loud noises, because sometimes I'd get triggered by random things and shut down completely. Everyone has complications. Yours just happened to be visible.
But you signed up for this knowing what you were getting into. You saw the wheelchair first day. You knew.
Elena's voice cracked. Brandon thought he was getting one thing and ended up with something else. Maybe he had a right to change his mind.
He had a right to his feelings. He didn't have a right to string you along for 8 months while resenting you, or to abandon you publicly, or to try to take your medical equipment, or to sue you for telling the truth about his actions. Jax's hands framed her face gently. Stop defending him. Stop making excuses for someone who treated you like a problem instead of a person. I don't know how to stop, Elena admitted. I've been doing it for so long. Practice. Start small. Next time you catch yourself apologizing for needing something, stop. When someone makes an accessibility issue about your burden instead of their responsibility, correct them. When you feel like you're too much, remember that the right people will never make you feel that way. Elena leaned forward until her forehead rested against his. What if I'm not strong enough to be what everyone needs me to be?
Then you admit it. You set boundaries. You ask for help. You remember that being the face of a movement doesn't mean being perfect. It means being honest. Jax pulled back slightly. Elena, I've spent 3 years hiding from my trauma because I thought admitting weakness made me less of a man. Watching you be vulnerable publicly while maintaining your strength is teaching me that the opposite is true. Vulnerability is strength when you're honest about it. Elena's phone buzzed. Sarah Park calling. I need to take this, Elena answered. Sarah? Elena, Brandon's attorney just filed a motion to dismiss the lawsuit with prejudice. It's over. They're dropping everything. Sarah sounded jubilant. Trevor's documentation was too damaging. They knew if we went to discovery, every discriminatory email and text would become public record. Brandon can't afford more bad publicity. It's really over? Completely. You're free and clear. And Elena? They're offering a settlement if you agree not to discuss the lawsuit publicly. $50,000. Elena's breath caught. $50,000 would cover months of living expenses, medical costs, startup funding for the advocacy organization everyone kept telling her to formalize.
What do you think I should do?
Honestly, take the money. You earned it by standing up to bullying. Use it to build something good. Sarah paused. But read the terms carefully. Make sure you're not signing away your right to discuss disability discrimination generally, just this specific legal case. After reviewing the settlement terms and agreeing to accept, Elena hung up and told Jax what happened.
$50,000. From the man who tried to take my shower chair.
Elena started laughing, slightly hysterical.
The universe has a twisted sense of justice.
Or a perfect one. He tried to strip away your autonomy, and instead, you got enough money to build autonomy for yourself and others. Jax smiled. That's not twisted. That's poetry. Elena's phone rang again. This time it was Dr. Okonkwo from Northwestern.
Miss Rivera, I know your interview isn't until Thursday, but I wanted to give you a heads up. The hospital board saw your viral video. They want to create a new position specifically for you, Director of Accessibility and Inclusive Care. It would combine clinical work with policy development and staff training. The salary is $90,000 a year, and you'd have a team of 3 reporting to you. $90,000?
Elena's voice squeaked.
Plus benefits, continuing education budget, and flexible scheduling to accommodate your advocacy work. We want you to be able to do both, clinical practice and public disability education. Is that something you'd be interested in discussing? Yes, absolutely yes.
After the call ended, Elena sat in stunned silence.
I went from unemployed to having my choice of jobs in less than a week. How is this my life?
Because you stopped accepting less than you deserved, and the universe caught up. Jax grinned. So, what are you going to do?
Take the Northwestern position. Build the advocacy organization with the settlement money. Help Marcus and the other people who keep reaching out. Maybe see where this thing between us goes.
Elena met his eyes.
If you're still interested in dating a woman who's about to get very publicly busy.
I'm interested in dating a woman who's exactly herself, without apology. The busy part just means I'll appreciate our time together more. Jax stood and extended his hand. Come on, I want to show you something. He drove them to the Mongols' clubhouse, where the parking lot was filled with motorcycles, and the building was lit up like Christmas. Inside, about 50 people had gathered. Club members, Rosa and Father Miguel, Mrs. Delgado and half the church congregation, Trevor and several strangers Elena didn't recognize. Tank stepped forward. Surprise! We threw you a celebration for the lawsuit dismissal. Figured you could use some good news surrounded by people who actually give a damn. The room erupted in cheers. Rosa pulled Elena into a fierce hug, whispering in Spanish about how proud she was. Father Miguel blessed her with tears in his eyes. Pops rolled over with a leather vest in his hands. This is for you, Pops said. Custom made. Not official club colors, but honorary membership. You're one of us now. The vest was beautiful. Black leather with adaptive closures and warrior wheels embroidered where club patches would normally go. On the back was an emblem showing a wheelchair with wings, and underneath, strength in motion. I can't accept this, Elena protested, but Pops was already helping her put it on.
Too late. It's yours. Welcome to the family.
Trevor approached nervously. Miss Rivera, I wanted you to meet some people. He gestured to a group of young professionals. This is the accessibility task force from my new job. We're at a tech startup that's building inclusive design software. They saw the video and want to partner with your organization once it's established. Pro bono consulting, technical support, whatever you need. I don't even have an organization yet, just an idea. You have more than an idea. You have a mission, a platform, and people ready to help. Trevor smiled. Let us help you build it right. The evening became a blur of conversations and planning and laughter. Sarah Park cornered Elena to discuss nonprofit incorporation paperwork. Dr. Okonkwo showed up with a signing bonus check and a bottle of champagne. Marcus Anderson arrived with his mother, both of them crying as they thanked Elena properly for the first time.
I'm going back to school, Marcus told her. And I'm starting a peer support group for kids who've experienced trauma. Because of you. Because you showed me that surviving something terrible means you get to choose what comes next. Elena found herself crying too, overwhelmed by the cascading goodness after so much pain. Jax appeared beside her, his hand on her shoulder anchoring her. Too much? He asked quietly. It's perfect. It's terrifying and perfect, and I don't know how to hold all of this without breaking. Then don't hold it alone. Let these people help you carry it. Jax turned her wheelchair to face the room. Look at what you built in less than a week. Imagine what you can do with a year, a lifetime. Elena looked at the faces surrounding her, bikers and church ladies, lawyers and doctors, veterans and teenagers, strangers who'd become family because she'd refused to stay silent when silence was expected. This was her community now, built not on obligation or pity, but on mutual respect and shared purpose. Rosa clinked a glass for attention. I want to say something. My daughter went through hell. She lost her ability to walk, her job, her home, the man she thought she'd marry. She had every reason to give up, to make herself smaller, to apologize for existing. Rosa's voice strengthened. Instead, she stood up, not with her legs, but with her spirit. And she reminded the world that dignity doesn't require walking, that love doesn't require convenience, that strength has nothing to do with physical ability and everything to do with choosing truth over comfort. The room fell silent as Rosa continued.
Elena didn't ask to be a voice for disabled people. She didn't want to go viral or become a symbol. She just wanted to live her life with honesty and autonomy. But sometimes, the people who change the world are the ones who simply refuse to accept the limitations others place on them.
Elena wipes tears as Rosa raised her glass.
To my daughter, to her strength, to her future, and to everyone in this room who showed up when it mattered. This is what familia looks like. Not blood, but choice. Not obligation, but love.
Everyone drank, and the celebration continued late into the night. At some point, Jax pulled Elena aside to a quieter corner.
I have something to tell you, he said, suddenly serious. I called my old therapist, Dr. Torres, set up an appointment for next week. I'm going back into treatment. Because of me? Because of you, but not for you. Watching you do the hard work of healing publicly made me realize I stopped doing my own work too soon. I plateaued because I was scared of what came next. Jax's expression was vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. I don't want to just survive anymore, Elena. I want to actually live. And that means facing the parts of my trauma I've been avoiding. That's brave, Elena said softly. No, it's necessary.
You deserve someone who's doing the work, not just coasting on past progress. He took her hand. I can't promise I won't have bad days. I can't promise the nightmares will stop or the guilt will fade. But I can promise I'll show up and try. That I'll be honest about my struggles instead of hiding them. That I'll meet your vulnerability with my own.
That's all I want. Honesty and effort. The rest we'll figure out together.
They kissed then, soft and tentative, two broken people finding wholeness not in fixing each other, but in accepting each other completely. The room around them faded, and for a moment, it was just Elena and Jax, two survivors choosing life over mere existence. 3 months later, Elena stood in front of a congressional subcommittee on disability rights, testifying about accessibility in healthcare. She wore her leather vest over professional clothes, a visual representation of all the identities she contained. Jax sat in the audience beside Rosa, both of them beaming with pride.
The question isn't whether disabled people can contribute to society, Elena told the assembled lawmakers. The question is whether society will remove the barriers that prevent our full participation. Accessibility isn't charity, it's justice. It's the recognition that human worth doesn't depend on physical ability, and that inclusion benefits everyone, not just those with disabilities.
Her testimony went viral, of course. But this time, Elena was ready for it. Warrior Wheels was officially incorporated, with Elena as executive director, Trevor as operations manager, and a board that included Sarah Park, Dr. Okonkwo, and Pops. They'd already helped 75 people navigate disability resources, connected 12 disabled veterans with employment, and were planning their first adaptive sports event. Brandon had moved to California, taking a lower-level job at a startup where his past didn't follow him quite so loudly. Elena had seen him once more, at a distance, and felt nothing but quiet relief that she'd escaped a future that would have slowly crushed her spirit. A year after the abandoned wedding, Elena and Jax got married in a park ceremony that centered accessibility and inclusion. The guest list included club members and church congregation, former patients and new friends, Marcus Anderson and his mother, Trevor and the tech team. Every person who'd shown up when it mattered. Elena wore her leather vest over a simple white dress. Jax wore his dress blues with his Mongols colors. Father Miguel officiated while Pops stood as best man, and Rosa cried happy tears in the front row.
I promise to meet your complications with creativity, Jack said during his vows. To see your wheelchair as a tool you use, not a tragedy I overcome.
To choose truth over comfort and vulnerability over performance. To show up even when it's hard, especially when it's hard.
I promise to claim space without apology, Elena replied. To remember my worth doesn't require your validation, but I'll treasure it anyway. To build our life together as partners, not caretaker and burden. To honor both our strengths and our wounds, because both make us who we are.
They kissed as husband and wife, and the crowd erupted in cheers. The celebration that followed was loud and joyful, exactly what Elena had dreamed of before she knew to dream of it. That night, as they drove to the cabin Jax had rented for their honeymoon, Elena thought about everything that had led to this moment. The subway accident that changed her body, Brandon's abandonment that freed her spirit, the viral video that gave her a platform, the community that formed around her honesty. No regrets? Jax asked, reading her expression.
None. Not even the hard parts.
Especially not the hard parts. Elena squeezed his hand.
The worst day of my life made space for the best ones, and I wouldn't trade this for any version of perfect that required me to be smaller.
Good, Jax said, because you're exactly the right size. Complicated and strong and honest and mine.
Ours, Elena corrected. We belong to each other, scars and all.
And driving into the sunset with the man who'd chosen her completely, Elena understood that Brandon had been right about one thing. Loving her was complicated. But complication wasn't the same as burden. And the right person would always know the difference. The right person would see her wheelchair and her strength, her vulnerability and her courage, her accommodation needs, and her absolute refusal to apologize for existing, and choose her anyway. Not despite who she was, but because of it. Some love stories begin with perfect moments and easy choices. Lena's began with abandonment and humiliation, with a stranger in leather offering dignity when the world expected shame. It wasn't the story she'd planned, but it was the story she needed, the one that taught her that being chosen completely beats being tolerated conditionally, every single time. And that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to make yourself smaller just to fit into someone else's